I wanted to share with you guys my author journey, my story of how I became an author and wrote these lovely books right here. And it's been a few years since I began officially writing full-time and also being a full-time YouTuber and now a full-time mama. So I actually created this spread in my bullet journal where I wrote down as many important dates as I could think of and like events and things that happened that really brought me to where I am today, along with on the other side all the different books that I've published since I began publishing. So you'll see that the first year I started out, I didn't publish anything. My second official year, 2017, was when I first published my debut novel, and I'll talk more about that in a second. Then my third year, in 2018, I published 2 books, followed by 2019 where I published 5 books in that year. And then in 2020, I only published 1 book. And in 2021, last year, I published 4 books total. And then you'll see at the bottom there is my plans and kind of hopes for 2022. And I'll talk more about that at the end. If you're interested, stick around. I have been self-employed for almost 6 years now and a published author for almost 5 years. 5 years this December, I think. Yes. And I have actually published, I think it is 14 books now. So these are some of my books right here. And I thought it'd be really fun to just sit down and talk about it for a little bit and share my journey of how I've gotten to where I am today. This guy right here was my debut, although technically, in case you're curious, I published it with this cover when I first was starting out. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's back up. So this was the book I was writing in November of 2016, but it did not have like this cover or anything. I had just written the first full draft, the first time I had ever finished a book. If you don't know what NaNoWriMo is, it stands for National Novel Writing Month, and I'll link it below if you want to know more, but I actually write all year round now. It was just the fact that so many people were writing all at the same time. It gives you this crazy motivation. It helps keep you accountable. It does a lot of cool things. And I have a playlist about that if you want to know more about NaNoWriMo and just writing the first draft, but that's for another video. I just realized while editing the video earlier today that my camera didn't catch like a good 5-minute clip. That something happened and the footage got lost. And so it was the whole story of how I got laid off. I had a good like 3 months warning. I had an amazing boss, and long story short, my entire department was laid off. That department was just like axed and they got rid of it. It was right around the end of 2016. I think my official layoff day was like a week before Christmas, but I started knowing about it very early on, maybe October. I know I had like 3 full months pretty much to prep. And so my husband and I were talking. He's self-employed and he loves it. And I was like, hey, what do you think about this idea? Like, I don't know what it's gonna look like, but I kind of love the idea of also being self-employed. I think I can make it work. And where are you going? And I was like, I have 3 months severance pay because I had worked at that company for almost 10 years. So I had a lot of severance pay, and I was like, this seems like a great opportunity to try to do what I am passionate about while I'm actually still getting paid the same as I was getting paid. And he's like, yeah, go for it. That sounds awesome. But he was also like, just FYI, that is probably going, oh my gosh, he's so squirmy. I have to walk while he's in the wrap. So this is how I'm getting my exercise and keeping him busy. Bear with me. But anyway, he was like, go for it, but just know that it's probably gonna take you longer than you think. The average business takes about 2 years to get off the ground. And I thought I could do it faster than that, but he was totally right. It took me about 2 years. And so yeah, that's the whole story behind how I ended up pursuing writing and trying to be full-time in the first place. Okay, so back to the video. Then that leads to 2017, and I'm sorry you might not be able to read my scribbles here, but basically I wrote that it was a very heavy learning curve. I set up my social media halfway, I think, through the year, sometime in June or July. I had to find beta readers, and later on I found critique partners, not this year. I had to find an editor and work with them. I had this huge learning curve again on learning how to self-publish, and I actually have never queried a book. Believe it or not, I looked at my debut again, and I was like, this is a book that needs to be self-published. It doesn't quite fit in traditional publishing. And I have this video on that if you want to know more, but again, that's a whole other topic. But then here's the most interesting thing is I started a Kickstarter. And if you don't know what that is, it's essentially, it's similar to pre-orders, but you do them, you know, outside of the typical pre-order vendors like Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And it was like a pre-order on the Kickstarter website itself. And there's some really cool features to doing that. Like you can add really fun goodies to your Kickstarter and just little things on top of the book, and people can get multiple books. And with all this support, you're trying to reach a specific dollar amount, right? And if you don't reach that dollar amount, then Kickstarter will give everyone their money back. So that is the reason that I originally wanted to do a Kickstarter. I also didn't really know how to do pre-orders on the regular websites, but that's besides the point. And I had done a Kickstarter before for a whole different music project, which had gone really well. And so I was like, you know what? This is how I will know if I'm meant to be an author, is if I can get, I think I said 100 people to buy my book, because I had read a stat that said something like the average indie author never sells more than 100 books. And I was freaked out by that just a little bit. Long story short, I was like, I absolutely need to make sure that this is the right thing and if I should even be pursuing this. So that was my method, is to use a Kickstarter to see if I could get enough support and enough people interested in reading my story. Oh yeah, and then I also started my AuthorTube channel, and funny enough, my very first video was about Kickstarters. It's not available anymore. I'm sorry. It's, I think I have it up on Patreon for my video club members as like an exclusive, because it's just so embarrassing. But anyway, I started my YouTube channel. At the very end of the year, in December of 2017, I think it was December 5th, I published Evelyn's Number, but again, with this cover and size. And I wish I had time to kind of elaborate more on the cover changes and all that goodness, but I actually have a whole playlist about cover design where I go over this in a lot more detail, so I'll just link that below if you want to watch. Oh, and last but not least, I actually published my author website, or created it and published it after this book was released. So for any of you authors out there who are like, oh my gosh, do I need a website before I'm published? Honestly, no, you don't. That leads us to 2018, where I published Pearl's Number and The Confident Corgi. The Confident Corgi came first in March. This was my children's book that I made just for fun. I literally created it in about a month, and I was still kind of learning the publishing process. I think I could do it like much faster right now. We're talking very simple. I just took pictures of my dog Penny and then I put them through a cartoon app. And I actually have a whole video series on creating a children's book as well. If you want to know more, I'll link that below also. In November, I believe, the second book in the Number series duology came out right here, Pearl's Number. All right, I put that it was the first time I wrote a book in a month, but that's not really accurate, because technically I almost wrote this in a month. I think I was just 1,000 words short of finishing my first draft of that in a month. So what I meant by that note, I think when I wrote it, was more that this was the first time I wrote and published a book within a year's time period. And that was just like shocking to me that that was possible. Like, yeah, I knew that other people had done it because NaNoWriMo exists. That's National Novel Writing Month, writing a book in a month. Of course, it's only a first draft. It usually takes longer than 1 month for most authors, but I just couldn't believe how fast I'd written a book when the previous book had taken me almost 10 years from start to finish, because I had started it all the way back in college. Since this is my author story, I feel like I should probably mention this briefly. So I did go to college with the intentions of getting a writing degree, a creative writing degree actually. I wanted to go into publishing. I honestly wanted to get a job where I could do reading for a living. And during my time at this college, I had a professor who just absolutely hated my writing. We started out in a poetry class, which was not a good fit for me either. And she and I just liked such different writing styles. And instead of encouraging the things that I was doing well, she discouraged me and was like constantly saying what I wasn't doing well. This isn't good writing. This isn't good writing. This isn't good writing. And after 2.5 years of that, I was just done. I didn't want to write anymore. I didn't like writing anymore. I didn't even like reading anymore. And it took me years to get past that, because for my, I think it was like, can't remember what they called it, basically like a senior thesis kind of thing, I got to pick what I wanted to write for one of my last classes, and I picked the start of this book. So I'd actually started drafting it 3 different ways, I think, during college. It was just such a terrible experience when you get discouraged by a professor and also by some of my peers. Just being totally honest with you, I wasn't a great writer then. I feel like I learned so much more about writing after college than I ever did during college. And I just learned so much from watching YouTube videos and reading books like Save the Cat Writes a Novel on writing craft. But here's the thing, I feel like I had potential to be a good writer, and she could have fostered that and pointed out to me, okay, here are the things you're doing well. And writing is so subjective that she could have found something, okay? But instead, I felt so discouraged that I actually stepped away from writing altogether. And like I said, I was working in the hospital system. I just stopped caring about writing. So this book was 10 years in the making. All right, that was a tangent, but I felt like it was important. Hopefully you enjoyed, and maybe you can even relate to that. So I'm gonna leave it in the video, I think, but comment below if you have a similar experience. Also in 2018 was the first Wander Writers Retreat, and it was here in Minnesota, so I got to go to it and it was super fun. I feel like that's where I got to know a lot of the writers that I had sort of interacted with on the internet, but I didn't know them that well, and we get to know each other so much better, and I still have a few of them as close friends today. Like Mandy Lynn and I now have co-written books. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but we officially met at the Wander Writers Retreat. And then Jessie Elliott is my critique partner, and she and I are still friends to this day, and she is the creator of the Wander Writers Retreat, by the way. I think I began my Patreon this year, and then I also did my first Barnes & Noble book signing, which was so incredibly cool. And then one of the most exciting things I felt like this was a turning point in my author career was when I began outlining, and I think drafting, yes, the Stolen Kingdom series. So let's talk about those books next. Technically, I outlined all 4 of these books, but when I say outline, it looked something like this. It was very, very loose. It was taking the outline from the Save the Cat beat sheet and just doing the very, very bare bones version of it. So I really didn't have a whole lot at all. And then I started writing book 1. Moving into 2019 here, I took Publish and Thrive, which is Sarah Cannon's publishing course, where she teaches not only about the publishing process, but also the marketing process. And I felt like I kind of understand the publishing process. I think I have stuff to learn, and I did, but I also knew that there was so much I could learn from her about the marketing side of things. And so I ended up learning quite a bit about both publishing and marketing. And this also contributed to what I would call like a turning point, because I wasn't selling a ton of books yet. But then this year I sold over 1,000 copies of The Stolen Kingdom, and that was my first time selling 1,000 copies on a release, and it was very, very exciting. And part of that, I forgot to write it on here, but part of it was because I was in a book box, which was super cool. So right here, Once Upon a Book Club included The Stolen Kingdom in their book box, and this was so cool. These signed book plates, which I didn't know what a book plate was at the time, or I would have done one that sticks in the book, which is what they're supposed to be. It's fine. I did multiple bookstore signings, and I also did my first library signing, and also BookCon. Oh my gosh, BookCon was the coolest thing ever. There was another Wander Writers Retreat, and then I'm skipping around here a bit, but I don't want to forget that I also did the Writerly Care Packages, which was my first time doing that, and it was a lot of work, but it was also really, really fun. And I kind of hinted at this already, but let's talk about the publishing side, because this was the year that I published 5 books, and you might be like, what? How? What? But keep in mind that a lot of them I was working on back in 2018. So whenever you see a lot of publishing going on, I was building up to the 2019 publishing year. Before this series ever started, I actually started the year publishing, hold on, the Marketing for Authors series with my co-author, Mandy Lynn. We started with How Your Book Sells Itself, which is kind of like the beginner level introduction to marketing. So it's the most basic, and it could apply to both traditional and self-publishing authors. And then we quickly followed that up with the other 2 books, oh my gosh, everything's falling. Grow Your Author Platform and Book Sales That Multiply. And back then we couldn't find any option for splitting the royalties. I believe now you can actually split the royalties on draft to digital and co-author a book that way, no problem. But back then we were like, oh my gosh, we would have to like create a business together and do taxes together, and it just got so incredibly complicated. So instead we individually wrote the books. So I wrote this one, and then Mandy would chime in and add her 2 cents, and we published it together, but this was technically my book. And then Mandy had the next 2 books right here, where she wrote the majority of these and I just chimed in, and then she gets all the proceeds from these books. Okay, we're just gonna do that for now. It's a little bit messy, but it's fine. And then in August of 2019, that's when this book finally came out, and I kind of hinted at how this was my first really big, awesome release. I feel like the marketing series was awesome, don't get me wrong, but that was still nonfiction and not necessarily the audience that I had been cultivating. So this book was such an exciting release. We had this fun live stream celebration party, and oh my gosh, I was just so incredibly proud of this book. I know I've said it already, but I just felt like this was such a turning point book for my author career. And then here's the thing. So back then, I was publishing exclusively on Amazon through Kindle Direct Publishing, or KDP. And so KDP had back then a pre-order option for ebooks only, still is ebooks only as far as I know. And for ebooks, they only gave you a 3-month pre-order window maximum. Just for comparison, now you can put your pre-order up to a year out. But back then, it was 3 months, and I wanted to put the next book in the series in the back of the book so that people could go and pre-order, you know, the Ginny Key, and I want to include an excerpt. So then that meant that I had to publish this book within 3 months. So this book came out in December of 2019, and this was intense. This was where I probably had my first taste of burnout, because this was so incredibly intense to go from this really exciting release to then immediately going, and I had a first draft of this, so I had to start editing and working with betas and setting up the publishing and the formatting and blah blah blah. I feel like this book didn't get its day in the sun because it was just so rushed, and I wish I'd had more time on it. I'm still happy with it. I feel like I wish I'd gone slower. So I learned from that. Let's jump into 2020, and I published one book. The Cursed Hunter, right here. This is the 3rd book in the series, but it's actually something that can be read as a standalone if you wanted to. And my goal was to take the characters from these 3 books. They kind of flow together from book 1 to 2, but book 3 is separate, and then all 3 characters come together in the final book. So my focus in 2020 was this book. 2020 was, frankly, the worst year of my life for many reasons that I'm not going to go into, but I did manage to get this book done. Thankfully, I had done quite a bit of work on it prior to things going really awful, and so I was able to essentially just follow through with my release, kind of coast a little bit when necessary. At the beginning of the year, I also did some other things, such as publishing merch for the first time ever. I feel like I wrote that down wrong because I thought I had Christmas merch, so I think that was actually a 2019 thing, right at the end of 2019. Pretty sure. My memory is terrible. I had also been doing some more writerly care packages, but now I'm questioning if that was 2020 as well. It might have been the beginning of 2020, but also the end of 2019 also. 2019 was crazy. Actually, all of this had been done in 2019, so I didn't actively do any of this in 2020. It just happened. The hardcovers, I ended up putting the Stolen Kingdom series in hardcover format, and I did not have this book at the time, but I had these covers created, and book 4 too. I just didn't share it with everyone. And I had these all set up to release. This released on the same release day as the paperback. The Ginny Key came out 2 weeks before that, and the Stolen Kingdom hardcover came out 2 weeks before that. So I had a kind of rapid release thing going on with the hardcovers. This is, again, a very long story, so I'll just link some of my videos about cover design and why covers sometimes change below, because I'm very proud of these books as well. Okay, Zion is awake. I have to go get him. I'll be right back. Okay, here's little Zion come to join the party. You weren't supposed to show up till 2021, you know. That's when you came along. You're early. But let me really quick wrap up 2020, because the 2 other things I wrote down that I didn't want to forget had happened was the audiobook came out, and I have this video all about that if you want to know more. I felt like it just didn't do well financially compared to my other books. It just was not doing well. It still hasn't made its money back. Part of that's because I don't know how to market an audiobook whatsoever, and I did not do a good job. The other half is that it's just super expensive. I feel like my narrator was crazy expensive, and I could potentially do royalty shares in the future, but it's also a lot of work, and this little dude is keeping me so busy that I just don't have time right now. But eventually I hope to come back and get the other 3 books in the series in audiobook as well. You like all those books too? So do I. Yeah. I'm gonna give him this. It might get very noisy in a second. Oh yeah, and then in 2020 I also won the Minnesota Author Award, and that was for The Stolen Kingdom, which I again had submitted for back in 2019. And then I won the award in 2020, and that was really cool, and it came with $1,000, so that was really exciting. And I had planned to do more book signings at Barnes & Noble in 2020, but those were canceled because of you know what, and I just haven't been back to Barnes & Noble since, which is kind of sad when you think about it. Hopefully I'll be able to start doing more signings again in the future, but I don't know. We'll see what happens because it could be a little difficult with this guy. I did start doing virtual book signings though, and I just did one this year. I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but I think those were a really fun replacement for in-person book signings because then, a lot more people get to participate as well. All right, so fast forward to 2021, which is just last year. And in this year, I actually created the self-publishing course with the Writing Mastery Academy and Jessica Brody. And that took us over a year, I think. Pretty sure it was almost all of 2021 and some of 2022 before that was published this year. So again, getting a little bit ahead, but all throughout 2021, I was working on that course behind the scenes. There's also that signed copy sale that I mentioned. And of course, Zion was born, just skipping ahead a little bit. But my main focus in 2021 is I came back to the books, and I published 4 books. So let me share those really quick. A lot of these books have been books that I've been working on for at least 1, if not 2 years in the making. Like for example, we finally finished the Marketing for Authors series with the last 2 books. Mandy wrote this one, which was book 5, Plan a Profitable Book Launch, and then I wrote Secrets to Selling Books on Social Media. And we had both started these years before, but we just put them on hold and almost didn't come back to them before we were like, you know what, we gotta make these a priority or we're never going to come back to them. So both of these were published in 2021 at the end of the year, right before Zion was born. At the beginning of the year though, let's back up, I actually published the 4th and final book in the Stolen Kingdom series, and there was both paperback and hardcover for that. This one again, it had been in the works for years, so it was just finally came out. You want to see? Here, check it out. Those are Mama's books. Yeah, I'm gonna put them back. And then last but not least, this was a project that originally was going to be for the course. So the concept for it was it's going to be a short story, like maybe 4,000 or 5,000 words, and it's just going to be an example of how I can publish something in the course. But then it just kind of spun off and became its own thing. It got quite a bit bigger, like 5 times bigger than that. And again, it was originally supposed to be like a spin-off story for this series, but now, if you guys have been keeping up with some of my latest videos, you know that this is officially going to be its own series. So it's going to be republished as a 2nd edition with a series cover that's going to match the other 2 books in the series that I have been working on since then. Are you okay? Yeah. Yeah. Good job, buddy. Good thing I have my notes because I'm so distracted right now. Okay, so that leads to this year, the year that we're in, 2022, and I had a signed copy sale at the beginning of this year, which I will link the video to that below. It was super fun. And then we finally launched that self-publishing course that I've been talking about in March. I hit 30K on YouTube, and we had a fun little party there where I answered some questions that I had never answered before. If you want to check that out, I'll also link it below. I can sense that the end of this video is coming. So that's essentially my author journey up till now in 2022. And really quick, I really wanted to talk about my goals and hopes for the future now that this little dude is in the picture, and as you can see, keeps me quite busy. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot. I'm looking right at something else I did in 2021, and I almost forgot to mention it because I didn't write it down. I also published the collector's edition version of the Stolen Kingdom series with all 4 books as a hardcover. So this is really, really cool, and it's massive, as you can see. All right, I'm gonna put you down for 1 minute, okay? Good job, buddy. Okay, so here we are in 2022. Technically, we're already halfway through the year. It is July tomorrow. And I've been doing a lot of things behind the scenes, but it's going to look like another year where I'm not doing much on the outside because I'm kind of ramping up for things and kind of working behind the scenes. So I have written 1.5 books so far this year. I have this vlog series that I call Writing a Book with a Baby, and I just kind of vlogged my experience now that I'm a new mom trying to learn how to manage my time with this little guy, and it's been intense, but it's been awesome at the same time. I gotta look at my notes. My memory since having a baby is absolutely ridiculous. My goal, if I were to just put it into like 1 or 2 sentences, would be to focus on solely books and YouTube. And so I've still been trying to figure out what that looks like. The beginning part of the year went really well, but I started to kind of burn out this last couple months. And so Yeah, yeah. You think so? Yeah. I know. Yeah. Okay, give me 1 second. 1 second. Honestly, the majority of my time, I only have a few hours a day to work right now in this current season of life. And so to make the most of that, my goal is to focus as much as possible on the books. And I still want to do, YouTube and Patreon, obviously, but I'm kind of just saying no to everything else. I am trying to really, really guard my time because I just don't have hardly any. It's been so incredibly intense. But on the book side of things, here is my list of things that are coming up. So we have The Secret Shadow, which I have already written the first draft. That's book 2 in the new series, the Queen's Rise series. And then The Secret Curse is book 3. And like I said, I've written half of that book, maybe not even half yet. And I'm working on that one right now. My hope is to get those books a lot closer to done than I used to in the past, just so that I can be sure that I actually am ready to publish them. Because like I said, I don't have that much time anymore. He's doing his zombie noises. This is his new favorite thing.
You're funny.
So I just don't know anymore. Maybe end of 2022 or maybe beginning of 2023. I don't know. And then at least 6 months after that, maybe closer to a year after that, I want to publish a compilation book of all 3. I also want to publish a how to self-publish, which is going to be a nonfiction book. Already written. I have a first draft because it's the same info that is in the course on self-publishing. Sorry for all the noises, but they're making me laugh. So I already wrote the whole first draft of that. It's just a matter of editing it, sending it to beta readers, going through the whole process and making sure that it's a quality book and getting a cover and all that jazz. But I have the first draft written, and again, it's the same info as what's in the course. So if you want to check out the course, I'll link it below because I think it's going to be a while before I get around to this book. Fiction has always come first for me, but I do hope to also do this nonfiction project hopefully within a year. I don't know. There's the 3-in-1. That's the compilation I was talking about. And then last but not least, I do eventually want to come back to Invisible Souls, which is this book that I just felt like I wasn't in the right mindset to write it. It needed to wait. And so we'll see. And then for those of you who love the Stolen Kingdom series, I have so many more books that could be within that world. Yeah. And Mama's very excited about them. I really want to write them. Like Gideon's story and Nezern and Malachi, maybe Caden's crew. I've got Jezebel's story. I feel like I'm forgetting some. Yeah. But yeah, that is the last 5 years now. It'll be technically 5 years this December is how long I'll have been a published author. And I've been full-time almost 6 years. So life is definitely changing, as you can see here, and I'm just trying to figure it out as I go, one day at a time. So subscribe if you're not already, if you want to join me on this journey. It's like season 2, writing as a new mama. Alright, that's all for now, guys. I hope you enjoyed this crazy video, and I will talk to you again very soon. Bye!
It started out like a movie scene. Something